Hey, Chris, this is Chris Hocker. Do you have me in?
I hear you.
203341.
Well, the point is I've got no power here where I live.
Geez.
The power went out at 5:45 right before I got home. So I'm going to have to participate by phone. It's the only choice I have.
Yep.
Thank you, Chris. I've renamed your phone line with your name so that folks participating can see what you're talking.
Okay.
All right. We are now live on YouTube, and at 7:04 p.m. we'll call this special meeting of the Easton, Reading, and Region 9 Joint Boards of Education to order, being held remotely by pursuant to Executive Order 7B for the last time, as the order expires in about 5 hours. Also call the Reading Board of Education to order in this special meeting, all members of the board being present, and I'll ask John and Todd to call their boards to order, please.
I'll call the Easton Board of Education to order at 7:05. Members in attendance: Jenny Cheetah, Randy Hicks, Jeff Parker, and John Stinson.
All right.
And then I'll call the Region 9 Board of Education to order at 7:05 p.m. as well, and all members present except for Gwen Denny at the moment.
Thank you, gentlemen. We'll move on to item 2 on the agenda, discussion and possible action. Contracts for central office administrators, including a potential executive session on the recommendation of the Joint Negotiating Committee. And before I turn it over to Mr. Stinson, who is the chair of that committee, as a preliminary note to make sure that it is clear in the public record as well as for the board's edification, as has been communicated, the contract that was previously approved for 3 years for Dr. Harrison has not been signed by both parties. As a result, the existing contract, which was ratified by both parties in or about August of 2020 and runs for 3 years, remains in effect. Included in that is a contractual increase effective July 1st, which was presented to the boards and approved as part of the central office budget process back in January. So there's no action to take on that. It is more a report out for clarity, as there were questions coming to various board members about the status of that situation. So with that, I'll turn it over to John to discuss the recommendations of the Joint Negotiating Committee.
Thank you, Chris. So we worked, this has been a long process. We started the process by really looking at all of the contracts. And I touched on this last time we got together, but I'll just give a very brief refresher. We looked at all of the contracts of our senior executives in central office and really, after just a little bit of discussion, realized that it is a bit of a tangled mess. And, since we've been, sort of in the business of trying to detangle these things and try to simplify, try to make these things easier for the boards and for administrators and sort of everyone involved, we went through this process of saying, what are the items that really should be standard in each one of these contracts and look to normalize those contracts. So when we look at the benefits across these contracts, with one exception, we've been able to sort of normalize those benefits, whether we're talking about holidays or vacation, talking about the sort of the healthcare, sort of all those things, really getting everybody on the same page so that the primary negotiating conversation is about salary. The one exception is when we did get into the conversation with Dr. Pearson-Uval, she did express some concerns about the sort of the long-term, the life insurance and the long-term care insurance, given the point in time where we were talking about that, and it would be mostly a change in her specific situation for her to go out and find new insurance and all of that under a really short timeline that she would have had, and the amount of stress that was already present for her in the month of June. We signaled to her very strongly we would like to normalize that contract, that part of the contract for her as well in the future. But, as it's not really a cost difference, it's just a structure difference. We didn't have a huge issue with just sort of allowing her to retain the terms of her current contract on that dimension. Everything else, we normalized. Part of that was the enshrinement of new benefits. So, where we found, some benefits that existed only in one contract before that had, say, many personal days, that in part were sort of enshrined in that contract to support, taking care of sick family members, in part to be used in the sort of, God forbid, knock on wood, case of bereavement. We said, instead of enshrining those those personal days in that way, why don't we carve out a new benefit? And we agreed to a new benefit that was that bereavement benefit for close family members. The same thing for sick days, to be able to use sick days for not just your own personal illness, but also for the illness of close family members. We think that these new benefits are a really sort of good step forward. It's something that is sort of generous and human, and the right way to go about things. And we think that the process overall, and I think we'll see it, tonight. I think one of the things we're going to be hoping to discuss is the Director of Technology and Digital Learning contract, and I hope approving the terms of the draft contracts that were distributed to members of the board. And when we look at that contract, it's not a matter of let's start from a blank page. It's, we know here are the core benefits, and it's really just a function of let's talk about what the right salary is for that position.
And so, John, for purposes of tonight, because we've already approved a draft contract for Dr. Pearson-Ugal, we're approving amendments to those terms, subject to the further discussion of the committee. And
That's
then
correct.
Contracts in the first instance with respect to the Director of Finance and Operations and the Director of Digital Learning, Technology Digital Learning.
That's correct. And so specifically, thank you, Chris, to the point of the amendments. So early on in the discussion with Dr. Pearson-Ugal, we had language in the contract, draft language in the contract that related to holidays. And our language specifically talked about the days that central office was closed. And Dr. Pearson-Ugal suggested that we were actually incorrect, because we were saying that central office was closed for 13 days. And she said, no, it's actually that for holidays, central office is closed for 12 days. However, it had been the practice that there was a floating holiday for Veterans Day, which is not a day that central office is closed, but it is a holiday that had been given to them historically. And so we mistook that correction as sort of giving up that floating, that sort of 13th holiday. And so we need to come back today and look for a correction there. Further to Dr. Pearson-Ugal's contract, the joint negotiating committee would suggest an increase in the salary. She was already looking at a 2% increase, and we are suggesting an increase of an additional $1,300. Are there any questions about anything that we've talked about?
And so from a process perspective at this point, if there are questions related to the draft contract that any members would like to discuss in executive session, a motion to move to executive session would be germane at this time. If there's any comments that are more general or a request to move to the question, we could also entertain that at this time.
I have a question regarding compensation, but since that's a public item, right? We don't have to go to executive session to discuss that. Is that fair?
We don't need to go to executive session. It is our privilege to go to executive session, given that it is with respect to a draft document and the terms of employment. Okay,
well, let me frame it this way, because I think that they hear, unless somebody else has a burning desire to go to executive session. What did we budget for the Director of Digital Learning at central office? Is Clarence on?
160 all in.
Okay. Very good. Well, all in is like a nautical term, but let me be more specific then, I guess salary.
Yep.
The budget block was for 160 fully loaded.
Right.
And the expectation for what it's worth is that the incoming candidate would start on or about 8/1, which would be a 1/12 reduction in the cost. So you'd have 160 to play with over 11 months in theory if you met the full budget amount. All in.
Okay. So you're going to make me go through the whole contract to see what the other things are. Okay, moving right along.
Any additional questions? Okay.
If there's no additional comment or no interest in executive session, would start by looking for a motion to approve the amended proposed terms of the contract of employment for Dr. Pearson Ugold, the Assistant Superintendent for Curriculum and Instruction, for the 2-year period commencing July 1st, 2021. And we can start in, Jeff, thank you. Is there a second in Easton? Jenny, I see. Same motion in Reading. Mike, thank you. Is there a second in Reading? Heather, everyone's very quiet. Todd, Region 9.
Yep, same motion there. Looks like Karen. And second with Mike.
Just
Or sorry,
one question. Did
one
we
question
want to,
before the second.
yeah, no, did we want to add and authorize the board chairs to sign onto that motion? I just curious.
I think the previous motion that we're amending actually authorized the chairs to sign.
I agree with Mike that it makes sense to include that language just for the purposes of clarity, because we're not amending a prior motion. We're making a new motion to amend a new document, to approve a new document.
Okay.
So if there's, so I'm hearing that from Mike as a motion to amend the main motion, and we'll look for a second in Region 9 to that motion.
So Karen, you're good
Or
with that
Reading.
motion? Sorry, Karen was the first on the motion. Region 9, Mike, you're okay with the second on that motion?
Yeah, I'm reading it as a motion to amend. It's going to move a little bit faster. Easton,
Yep.
is there a motion to amend the main motion?
Jeff?
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you. Is there a second? Thank you.
Yes,
Jenny,
Jenny is-
Reading, same request, motion to amend the main motion.
Yes.
Mike, thank you. Is there a second? Heather, thank you. Is there any objection from any of the 3 boards, the main motion being amended to include Mike's language with respect to the authorization of the board chairs to sign? Hearing no objection, the motion is deemed amended to include that language. Any further discussion on the motion? Hearing none, we can call the question starting in Easton.
I'm so
Jeff?
sorry, guys. I'm trying to follow along. So who was the second for Region 9?
Mike,
Me, Mike.
Mike D'Agostino, Karen was the maker of the motion.
Thank you.
Same motion that everybody had just amended.
Okay. For Easton, Jeff?
Yes.
Thank you. Randy?
Yep.
Thank you. Jenny?
Yes.
Thank you. I vote yes. Motion passes 4-0 in Easton.
So fast in Easton. Ready, Heather,
Yes.
Colleen,
Yes.
Mike,
Yes.
John,
Yes.
Steph, Steph?
He's saying yes.
Yes, okay. And Chris Hucker,
He's
on the
muted.
phone.
I don't know if he's a co-host. Maybe you might have to unmute him.
there we go. Chris?
Yes.
Yes, thank you. I vote yes. Motion carries 7-0. Todd, Region 9?
All right, Region 9, Cheryl? Yes. Mike?
Yes.
Yes. Juliet?
Yes.
Gwen, I don't think has joined, so we'll skip her. Karen?
Yes.
Mary Lee?
Yes.
Maureen?
Yes.
And myself, Todd, yes, carries 7-0.
Thank you. John, do you have a preference as to which position to take next?
I think it would be useful to approve the Director of Technology and Digital Learning.
Okay. Is there a motion to approve the draft terms for the contract for the Director of Digital Technology and Digital Learning and authorize the board chairs to sign?
So move.
I saw Mike for Region 9.
Second, Maureen, looks like for the second.
Look in Easton.
Do I have the motion? Thank you, Jeff. Looking for Jenny or Randy to second.
Second.
Thank you, Randy.
Same question in Reading. Same motion. Mike and John with the second. Thank you. Same as with respect to the Assistant Superintendent's contract. Any questions, comments, discussion, or anyone seeking to move to executive session to discuss the draft terms?
Are we discussing any of the terms, including compensation tonight, or is that, how is that being handled? I apologize for not knowing.
The joint negotiating committee has prepared a draft contract and has recommended that that draft contract be approved by the boards. That was what was circulated by John earlier. And to the extent that there are questions about the specific terms that anyone would like to discuss, we can certainly move to executive session to discuss them. If there are no further questions, comments, or motions, we can call the question on this issue also. I saw the motion first out of Region 9, I believe, so we can start that.
Yes. All right, Cheryl. Yes. Mike,
Yes.
Juliet,
Yes.
still no Gwen, so we'll skip her. Karen,
Yes.
Mary Lee,
Yes.
Maureen,
Yes.
and myself, yes, carries 7-0 in Region 9.
For Easton, Jeff?
Yes.
Thank you, Randy.
Yes.
Thank you, Jenny.
Abstain.
Okay, I vote yes. The motion passes 3-1 abstention.
301.
301. Thank you.
Calling the question then in Reading, Heather,
Yes.
Colleen,
Yes.
Mike,
Yes.
John,
Yes.
Steph, yes, Chris Hocker.
Yes.
I vote yes, motion carries 7-0 in Reading. Which brings us to the last position, John.
Yes, the contract for the
Can I
direct.
ask
Oh, yes.
related but not necessarily part of discussion. I'm just curious, did all of the boards receive the details at the same time tonight? I didn't notice all the addressees.
Yes, it should have gone to all of the board members.
Okay, I
And
guess I'm
it
just
should- Yep. Sorry, go ahead.
concerned about the entirety of the tri-board voting on something with not a lot of time to review.
So
Um,
I think the one note that I would make is it's the exact same contracts that we reviewed the last time that we got together, with the only difference being the salary and the 13th holiday.
Well, okay, I guess I think salary for this new position is a significant piece of information. And I just wanted to state that that's one of the major reasons why I abstained.
I understand.
John, is it the salary increase for Stephanie that we were talking about, or the new? Okay. it's the new-
There's just for the new position. Okay. So I think that takes us to the sort of final contract for discussion, and that would be the Director of Finance and Operations contract.
And it is the recommendation of the negotiating committee to bring forward a contract for approval by the boards.
Correct.
Mike,
Mike?
I'd like to move that we recess to executive session to discuss the draft contract for funds for the
All right.
Director of Finance and Operations.
I would
Thank
second
you.
that motion.
Mike, second from Maureen. Looking for complementary motions from either Easton or Reading. Jeff for Easton.
Do I have a second in Easton? Thank you, Randy.
So moved, Reading?
Thank you, Mike. Second in Reading.
I'll second.
Thank you, Heather. Why don't we quickly call the roll on the motion? Let's start with Region 9 because Mike started that.
Thank you. Cheryl? Yes. Mike,
Yes.
Juliet,
Yes.
Gwen has not joined. Karen,
Yes.
Mary Lee,
Yes.
Maureen,
Yes.
and myself, yes, carries 7-0.
For Easton, Jeff?
Yes.
Thank you, Randy.
Yep.
Thank you, Jenny.
Yes.
Thank you. I vote yes. Motion carries 4-0.
In Reading, Heather,
Yes.
Colleen,
Yes.
Mike,
Yes.
John,
Sure.
Steph, and Chris Hocker.
Yes.
I vote yes. The motion carries 7-0. All three boards are moving to executive session at 7.